like to start. My name is Tom Fernandez. I'm the principal of Inwood 52, located in the northern part of Manhattan, but my team will explain that. I just want to let you know, we've been dibbling with this work since 2011, January. We've been part of the GE family since 2009, and we're very appreciative of Kelly Wells and the GE Foundation for giving us the opportunity and the support and the resources that we need to be working on implementing the Common Core. So with that said, I want to introduce my team. My assistant principal, Lupe Leon. She will be introducing the team, and I'm out of here. They told me I need to be quiet.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Hernandez. Good morning. Before we begin, I would like to introduce our team. Ms. Lewin, literacy teacher. Ms. Moore, ESL teacher. Ms. Bernadette Carroll, literacy teacher as well. Mr. Bilson, our math lead teacher. And Mr. Salugado over there recording. Okay, so today I am going to, in order to begin with this strategies, intervention strategies, I have to give you a little bit of information about our school. So I'm going to start with that. So our school is an intermediate school located in the historic English section of the Upper Manhattan, New York. Our school has the largest Dominican American community in the country, largely of first and second generation born, and including recent immigrants. We currently have 575 students enrolled from grade 6 to 8, and the majority of our students, we have 98% of our student population being Hispanic, 62% English language learners, and 50% special needs students, and 5% of our students are of African American descent. In our school, we have 2 academies, including the Schools of Environmental and Applied Science and the Visual and Performing Arts. And with that said, I am going to introduce Ms. Moody, that is going to carry you through all of those strategies that we use with the English language learners in our building.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm an 8th grade ESL lead teacher at the school, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a Tier 1 intervention, which is the first tier that you do if you're doing a response to intervention program. And of course, those of you who are familiar with response to intervention, Tier 1 is strong core instruction. And as we know, strong core instruction is at the heart of all student learning. And with strong core instruction, you can support the needs of at least 90% of your students. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of research slides, and then we'll move right into the participatory activities, which show you how we do interventions in our classrooms. So this first slide is actually taken from a piece of research on response to intervention that is posted on the New York City Department of Education's website under Educator Resources. So if you want to go back and get more resources about this, you can go back there and look under Educator Resources. Also, you all have folders on your desk. If you could all grab a folder and just open it up. On the left-hand side of the folder, you will see an agenda. Underneath the agenda, you will see a reflection, which we will do at the end, and under that, you will actually see the research that I'm presenting on. But you don't have to worry about flipping through it right now. I just want you to know that you have it with you. You can take it with you. So, as I said, strong core instruction is at the heart of intervention for all of our students. And this instruction needs to target the needs of your specific student population. So you can only do that if you know your population really well. One thing that we do at our school as we're considering the needs of our population is we focus on these 5 interrelated instructional principles for diverse learners. And today we're actually going to be focusing on 3 of these 5 principles, so if you could just put them all up. In the participatory activities you're going to be engaging in, we are going to be practicing teachers and students producing together. That's the first principle. We're also going to be practicing the 4th and the 5th, teaching complex thinking, and teaching through conversation. The other 2 we would do, but we have an hour and a half, so we got to be realistic. A third thing that I just wanted to mention is a misconception that we have regarding English language learners and their ability to engage in higher level thinking activities. And the misconception is that English language learners are not ready to deal with complex thinking type of activities until they get the basics down, and that is simply not true. The reality is that they're equally ready as all kids in your classroom to engage in these high-level activities. But it is our job as educators to find a way to get to their thinking. And we have to be creative about it. The implications are that we have to provide strong core instruction, and I want to say common core line, for all of our students in our classroom. And we have to provide multiple entry points so that all of our learners' needs are met in each classroom. A final thing, this is not research-based, this is more common sense. I want you to think about the idea of student-generated questions, because the activity that you're going to engage in with me is all about that. What if we stopped generating the questions for our students? What if we stopped deciding that we need to give them the way to interpret the text, and we left it open to them? Well, I think you'll see that it's a really powerful way to get at student understanding and student learning. So think about it. Think about college and career readiness, and think about what is more authentic. Giving your students a list of questions that you created, or forgive me, a test company has created, or whoever, and then seeing how they do, or letting them interpret the text and then seeing what they understand from it. That's just food for thought. So now we're going to engage in a thinking activity. This thinking activity is going to be, you're going to have to reconceptualize the way that you think of text. We're going to use a short film as a text this time. And you're going to need a paper in your folder, so please open up your folders. On the right-hand side of your folder, you will see a small packet. There are directions on the top of the page, and there's a graphic organizer underneath it. You can just take a moment to review the directions for yourself. Ma'am, it looks like this. Directions on the top, graphic organizer on the bottom. While you're reviewing the directions, I'll just say that there's a reason for this text. I chose this text because our first common unit for ELL in English is a unit focused on social justice, and we're using a very rich text, To Kill a Mockingbird, and I had to think of a way to give my English language learners access to this text. And I thought about the book, and I thought about how the first few chapters of the book really go into Scout's experiences of just getting into school, of negotiating relationships with other students, with a teacher. She's trying to understand what's going on in her family, with her brother, he's changing and growing up. And I thought this movie was the perfect way to get them to think about this concept. So, our activity is going to be, we're going to watch 2 clips. Basically, we're just dividing the movie in half. It's like a 9-minute movie. After we stop watching the clip, I want you to think about the characters and the interactions they have with each other. And I want you to write down one question you have about a character and one question you would like to ask a character. I'll give you just a couple minutes to do that after the clip. Then we'll resume, watch the rest, you'll write 2 more questions, and then we'll come together and talk about it. You ready? Any questions?
This is Joseph. Say hello.
You should sit beside Pamela. No, you shouldn't.
Time for the air. Oh, not you, Joseph. Fine, you can just go and sit over there. Good. Now I'm sure we're all going to make Joseph feel very welcome. Hands down. Take out your maths matters.
Miss, Seth Quinn threw me book out the window. Did not. Did so.
Seth Quinn, go down and get that book. Now, page 37.
20 divided by 10. Next one, 18 divided by 9. 56 divided by 8 is equal to 36 divided by 6. 6, correct. Last one here, 49 divided by 7.
Hey, Lloyd, do they know it's Christmas?
Christian Kelly.
What?
Are you annoying Joseph?
No.
Is he Joseph? I'm sure he isn't. Sit up straight so I can see you, Christian Kelly.
He was poking Joseph's back, miss. Shut up. He was. Pick off.
No! Take it down.
Specky fancies you. You're dead.
Hurry up now, we haven't got all day.
Excellent, boys. That is it for today. But remember to practice your psalms at home. Okay? Good day to you.
Lively. What's number 3?
Christian, what did I just say?
Don't know.
No talk. I wasn't just finish your sums. You finished, Joseph? Good lad. Now, I think we've all had plenty time. Pencils down. Down. Now, who's first? Seth Quinn.
Didn't have me hand up.
Come up now and do number 1 first, please.
Betty gets it wrong.
Maybe we'll have a little let's go for the Seth for a while. Now, Hazel, why don't you show us all how to do number 1? Good girl.
Okay? You understand? And then you do that tomorrow, eh? Okay, good day, bye-bye. So they believe in you, resting the whole game on your shoulder, eh?
I am a star, Father. In the last game, I scored 3 goals.
Yes, you're a star. You're a star.
Hey, Lively, you hungry? Do you want that? It's a good one. Kenny's got snot on his finger. What? On my finger. Let go.
Just let go. Everybody, hands in the air.
Oh, my finger broke my finger.
Sit down, hands in the air. There's nothing broken, you'll be grand.
It's sore.
I'm sure it is.
I see the knickers. What color? No.
That's better. Hands down.
Yellow.
Oh, God, give me strength. Christian, sit down. Now, Joseph. Christian is no angel. Are you Christian?
I didn't do anything.
We do not pull fingers or whatever you just did to Christian here, in this classroom or anywhere else. Understood?
You're definitely dead.
Now I'd like you to take 3 or 4 minutes just to write down one question you'd like to ask a character and one question you have about a character. And if you forget the character's names, it's actually written in the directions for you. I think most people are finished at this point. I
not a squeak out of you. Just stand there. Open up page 47 of Totally Gaeilge, questions 1 to 7. I am going to be right outside now and listening for any messing.
I didn't do anything.
Shut up, Christian, for Christ's sake. We need to sort this out, boys.
I didn't do anything.
Seth, what happened?
Nothing.
It's a funny sort of nothing I saw. Well, Joseph, your turn. What happened? You're just great, lads. What am I going to do with you? Right, so. That's the way you want it?
Yes.
Yes, Hazel.
I've seen it.
No, Hazel.
But I've seen a crystal ball.
Back inside, Hazel.
Wait.
Hazel.
She's a bitch, that one. I was only telling her.
Come here. Hazel O'Hara.
What?
I heard what you just said, Hazel O'Hara.
It was a part of the conversation.
Don't you dare talk to me like that.
Like what?
Stand up.
Yeah, I'm standing.
With hands in the air then.
She thinks she's robbing a fucking bank. No.
No. In you go.
Now I'd like you to take 3 or 4 more minutes to write a question you'd like to ask a character and a question about a character. I would actually like to have a share out for this. So I would like you to share out your juiciest, your most complex, your most interesting question. So if you're really excited about a question that you have, please raise your hand because we would love to hear it. Who would like to start? Thank you.
What did Christian Kelly see in Joseph's countenance that made him stare back intently?
Great. What did Christian Kelly see in Joseph's countenance that made him stare back intently? Other questions that you just can't keep to yourself, please. Yes.
What happened to Joseph's father? I mean, why was he shot?
What happened to Joseph's father? Why was he shot?
Well,
Yes.
I'd like to ask Joseph what about his current classroom situation reminds him about where he comes from.
Yes, please.
Wanted to know what question Joseph had before she put him in the seat.
Good question.
What was Hazel's motivation for reporting, willing to take risks by reporting the incidents that occurred between Joseph and Kristen?
And then one more.
I'd like to ask Joseph, what did you learn from your father that helped you on your first day?
So, and before we discuss this, I just want to say, this activity is intended to be done with multiple viewings of the video. So after the students have generated these juicy, strong, complex questions, they would watch the video again to figure out the answers themselves. And they could watch it as many times as they would need to in order to do that. Because that's what you do with a closed reading, too. You don't just read a text once and then go answer a question. You've got to read it several times to get to the heart of it. So, if we just take a quick look at these questions, what do you notice about the questions that we've created in our group? Maybe you can think back back to some of the presentations from yesterday, try to make that connection.
They're given choice.
Given a choice? You mean the students are given a choice?
Students are given a choice on which character they'd like to respond about.
Very good.
Hazel showed a lot of grit.
They show a lot of grit. How so?
Well, she was determined. She was determined to, I would say, correct her wrong, by speaking out and just not being willing to just hear no from the teacher.
Great. So that's specific to Hazel. Who else? Anybody else? Any noticings about these questions? Yes.
They're not factual where you just have one right answer. It's more community-based or evidence on that, but it's not a simple one right answer.
Great. And where do you have to draw your evidence from? Yeah, from the text, right?
I guess it's sort of thing back, and I sort of like the idea that it stretches the thinking about the story. I know for us, it's a lot easier for us to come up with these questions, but in writing the questions, I'm thinking about how a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader would ask these questions and what kind of things they would think about. It really does a great job at stretching it.
Thank you. Would you like to see the kinds of questions my 8th graders ask?
Yes.
That's the next thing. So you're going to see samples of questions that my 8th grade English language learners asked. These are level 1s, which is the lowest level on the New York State English annual exam, whatever you want to call it. They also are beginning level or low intermediate level English proficiency on our state ESL exam. And let's look at their thinking. And I'm not sure if you can see it really well, so I'll just read the first couple to you. The first one says, and bear with me, they're English language learners, you're not going to see native-like grammar. Why the boy don't care if he's having a new friend when he says, so what? Because he doesn't care who's new. Number 2, why did the children laugh at Joseph? Because Joseph is new. 3, why did the girl treat Joseph nicely? Because she's a good person and she wants to protect him from Christian. 4, why did the teacher say, put your hands in the air? Because the teacher doesn't want the children touching other children. Let's see another set. 4, why did Joseph give Christian the answer? Joseph gave Christian the answer because Joseph thinks that like that, he can save his life. Let's actually skip to, what do you say? Number 11. Why did the teacher keep saying, God give me strength? The teacher keeps saying, God give me strength because all the children are behaving bad. And then one more. Why did Christian Kelly want to fight with Joseph? Christian Kelly wants to fight with Joseph because Joseph caused Haitian a lot of problems. That's what Christian Kelly thinks. So, if we're thinking about those 2 pages of questions, what do you notice?
They're thinking deeply about what they saw. They're not asking surface questions. They're asking real questions of character motivation and cause and effect.
Yeah, what kind of questions are they not asking? They're not asking questions like, what was the bully's name? How many bullies in the classroom were there?
Through their questions, you can see the critical engagement that they had with the text.
Yes.
It spoke to them. For the most part, it is likely that they themselves were new to the country and were also remembering their first day of school.
Yes, very good. And maybe one more thought? Yes,
I was
please.
going to say that, but they're also why questions.
Yes, I'm so glad you noticed that. They don't need to talk about the who did this and how old is this person and that sort of thing. They go straight to why. So maybe we can go straight to why. Yeah, pushing their vocabulary. She took a word that she knew in Spanish and she tried to use it in English. So, what do you do from there? Well, you gotta figure out if your student really gets the main idea, and if that student can summarize, and if that student gets the plot structure. And so you can see that on a couple of the following slides. This is one student's work. We actually saw some of the questions she generated before. This is a T-chart that she generated. This is no teacher help. It's just her telling me what she understands about the story and what she has a question about.
Question for, at what point in time of the year are you doing?
September.
This is early September?
September.
And these are children that are new?
Mm-hmm. She's been in the country for a year. I created a plot element worksheet because not only did we do the video for New Boy, we also analyzed the short story, which is written by Roddy Doyle, an amazing Irish author. And it's also a feature chapter in his book, The Deportees and Other Stories. So this is the plot elements worksheet I created for that story. They had to analyze the different parts of the story and where it fits in the plot. You actually have that. And then the final piece, plot diagram. Let's see if they get the whole. Let's see if they get the structure. So, yeah, that's what your English language learners can do if you allow them to do it. That's what any of your kids can do if you allow them to do it. If you provide them that space and that opportunity to show them thinking, they will. It's got to be with a complex text that is grade appropriate and that is interesting to them and that they can relate to themselves and they can relate to what you're going to be doing in the future.
But I teach ELLs too, and to me that's not really level one. My level one is to not be able to write. So do you have to provide them any vocabulary or help in understanding?
So for the plot elements, I pre-taught the vocabulary, of course. But in terms of the writing, I did very little in terms of teaching them how they should write it. I wanted to see what they could do first. Because there's always an assumption that they can't do it. So if we think they can't do it, they won't do it because we're never going to push them to do it, right?
Did you do some baseline data?
Yes, my baseline data was a school-wide diagnostic, and I got 0 writing on it. And that's how I realized I got to do this differently. And that's when I thought about the video. And that's how I got my first writing from that. And my first reading of the text.
And were the students challenging at the beginning?
Yes. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know if I was going to stick around. They didn't know what my game was. They didn't know how I was going to teach them. But we had a lot of fun doing it.
When you moved on to Kill Mockingbird, how did this activity translate into that much longer text?
Good question. We actually did the same kind of activity with parts of the film, and then the selections from the book that we read, and also with the play version, which we did for the trial part of the book, because that really comes alive when the kids have to play the characters. So it just builds in complexity, more complex texts. But I would like to continue us on the journey.
All right, so I am Bernadette Carroll. I am an 8th grade ELA teacher. I've been with New York City DOE for I think 18 years this September. I have taught everywhere from Title I to gifted and talented. So I've taught the spectrum. And one of the things that I have found, especially with the Common Core, is we need to change our thinking. We need to change our thinking about what they can do, what they can handle. We need to raise our expectations of them. Because if we raise our expectations, they will come and do them. Or they will at least try. So, do we need to shift our thinking? In the past, I've thought that, okay, if I give them everything, they'll get it, they'll know it, they'll understand it. Or, do I need to let them start to interpret and guide them along that journey? Is the point of education to get students to answer our questions and understand our interpretations, or make their own? Which ones are they going to remember more? Are they going to remember mine, or are they going to remember theirs? So I'm sure anybody who's an ELA teacher, your kids can get up and they can, if you're reading a text, they can talk about it with you. They'll talk. And then you ask them to write something, and you either get or a deer in headlights. Like, what do you mean I have to put it into writing? I just told you all about it. So we need to give them tools to get that thinking into writing. And that's a lot of the work that I've done with my kids this year. I had a general ed class. At the beginning of the year, I see the specs on my kids. Out of my 32 kids, 16 of them were either L's or former L's. So they have the same issues. They passed the nicest lab, the state ESL exam, but they still have those vocabulary deficiencies. They still have those ideas like, I don't know if I can do that, that's too hard. So I help to create scaffolds in the writing for them. We do things step by step. I do it incrementally for them to build the ideas so that they can get to the writing. I show them how to gather their evidence. I show them how to gather their ideas, and not just from one spot in the book. I'm going to have them do a performance task that's going to ask them to span 6 chapters. I'm going to give them a device along the way that's going to help them gather that information. So when I give them that performance task, it's not, I don't know where all that stuff is. It's, I've been gathering it all along the way. So we're going to talk a little bit about Animal Farm. So in your packet, in your folders, I've given you just a brief summary of Animal Farm. The activity that we're doing is based on Animal Farm. This is something that I do with my kids. This isn't something that I just came up with for you guys. I love you all, I think you're great, but this is something that I do in my classroom. So, Animal Farm, for those of you that may not have read it in quite some time, it's a story, when they first see it, they're like, what do you mean these animals can talk? That's silly. So it's, this group of animals revolt on this farm because they are oppressed by their human owner. Once they revolt, the pigs, who end up being the smartest, kind of take over. 2 pigs in particular kind of emerge as the leaders. So you have Snowball and Napoleon. Snowball's the guy about, let me help everybody. Let's really get this to be a community. Let's really get this to be all of us working together. And then you got Napoleon, who has his own agenda. Napoleon's not a great talker, though. So he uses Squealer to manipulate. Squealer's one of the other pigs who's a great talker. He's the most persuasive of all the animals. And he uses Squealer to get the animals to do whatever Napoleon wants. All right? So if you would look at one of your first worksheets, it says interpreting Squealer's words. All right, it should be the second one in your pack. So what I've given you guys, since I'm assuming you haven't read Animal Farm in quite some time, is the left-hand box is a context. I'm just giving you the context of what's going on in the book at this given time when you're going to see this book. So for the first one, we have on the farm, where everything is supposed to be equal. The pigs have started to separate themselves from the other animals by keeping all the milk and apples for themselves. So what we're going to be doing is, you're going to see the clip where Squealer goes in and tries to manipulate the animals. And then we're going to interpret his words. So I've done the first one because this is the way I do it with my kids. If I want them to know how to do something, I have to show them. All right, so let's look at the first clip.
Sadness will spells. Not if we distract them. Yeah. And knowledge is power.
Well, the knowledge I'd like is who keeps stealing the milk and apples.
Yeah.
That's what I call knowledge. Share and share alike. Isn't that animalism? Well, where's our share?
Animals, please!
Who has
Distraction is one of their keys to manipulate.
We'll let them calm down, then Squealer can explain. Thank you.
Back in the farmyard, it's lunchtime for the chickens. Chickens are also one of God's wonders on the farm. This mother hen is showing her young chicks how to scratch the ground and look for grain. God has given them a sharp bill so they will have no trouble picking up the bits of food. All of the farm animals need lots of water.
Well, of course we do. Animals! Napoleon has arranged to have this television here for your enjoyment and relaxation. This, my friends, is animalism in practice. But it is also animalism for us pigs to have the milk and apples.
I'm off. That doesn't seem fair to me. I love milk and apples. Well, we all do. Mind you, Napoleon's always right. I'll talk to Jessie. She'll explain.
Feed the brain. And if our brains are not fed, then Jones would come back. Do any of you want to see Jones back? No. Good. Then for all our sakes, we will continue to drink the milk and eat the apples.
So, the animals are in an uproar. The pigs have taken all the milk and apples. They're like, we're supposed to be all equal here, and yet you're getting these privileges. So Squealer comes in to talk. So let's look at the interpretation. In the middle column, I just wrote down Squealer's exact words for you. I wasn't going to make you copy all that. So, what Squealer means by, first Squealer says, animals. Napoleon has arranged to have this television here for your enjoyment and relaxation. This, my friends, is animalism. These are their commandments or their principles of fairness. But it is also animalism for us pigs to have the milk and apples. Milk and apples feed the brain. And if our brains are not fed, then Jones will come back. Do any of you want to see Jones come back? Good. Then for all our sakes, we will continue to drink the milk and eat the apples. So we're doing this for you. So what he really means is, we, the pigs, want to keep all the milk and apples for ourselves, so we're going to use your fear of Mr. Jones coming back to manipulate you into letting us have them. I'm going to convince you that it is in your best interest for us to have all the milk and apples. The animals on the farm, the majority of them are not very intelligent, so they're easily manipulated. So we're going to look at another clip, and I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you the scenario. Snowball and Napoleon basically do not agree on anything. Snowball has this idea to create this windmill that's going to make life so much better for them. And Napoleon is against it simply because Snowball has suggested it. So they have this huge debate as to whether or not the windmill should happen, and Napoleon realizes he's got to get rid of Snowball if he wants to have total power.
We will continue to try to improve our lives, and soon came up with a new scheme. We were called to a meeting.
My friends, surely you can see that Snowball's idea for a windmill is a waste of our labor.
It's not a waste. Once built, it will ease our labors.
Yes, must be directed at feeding ourselves, arming ourselves, barricading our borders, and defending animalism.
No. For animalism to prosper, we must convert all the animals on all the farms. We must send our pigeons out to spread the message of revolution.
We will vote on it. All those in favor of Napoleon? And all those in favor of Snowball?
Animals, think of the benefits of a windmill. Yes, it will be hard work to build, but once it's built, it could save us so much labor that we may have to work only 3 days a week. Now, all those in favor?
My puppies had become Napoleon's servants. Snowball was banished, and Napoleon took control.
Friends, Snowball is a traitor and a criminal. But he was a brave fighter. Bravery is not enough. Loyalty is more important.
You see how clever Napoleon has been, my friend? Of course he's not against the windmill. In fact, it was his own idea. He opposed it to flush out Snowball for the traitor he is. Tactics, friends.
There will be no more meetings, no more endless debates.
All right, so what I'm going to ask all of you to do, I have written for you the exact speech that Squealer just gave. Based on what I've told you thus far, based on what you know about his manipulating the animals, what do you think he really means by those words? You can work with a partner, you can work as a group, you can work individually, it's up to you.
Setting him up as a fool.
What was the P on the black now?
That's what I do actually, whenever you send me a directive, I print it out and I read on it. But your slogan is kind of annoying.
What he does Napoleon, or was it, who peed on the map? Napoleon or Snowball?
So originally, Snowball has this brilliant idea in the spirit of why they originally took over the farm, which was to produce and make for themselves, not for others. So what he says is we need a windmill because it'll lessen our workload in the true spirit of this shared peace. It wasn't Napoleon's idea. So Napoleon,
And if it's not Napoleon's idea, Napoleon.
well, he chases, right? He puts the 60 dogs on Snowball.
Which is like the SSA.
Snowball goes under the fence. The bookie goes under the fence. And he disappears to the farm. He's to Cuba, right? And then he did that, but then he turns it around because he realizes that everybody is in support of it.
It's mine.
It's mine. I subverted, I flushed out Snowball.
All right, so
But like, yeah, our leader is really smart. Our leader has these incredible tactics.
Would anyone like to share what they came up with as their interpretation of what Squealer actually means?
We'll keep the windmill, convince you that it's Napoleon's idea in the first place, so he can take credit for it, boosting his political standing, and eliminate our main competition.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Please.
Same thing with Squealer as portraying Snowball as a traitor and Napoleon as the champion, as the benefactor of Animal Farm.
Right, he does all of this. Yes.
Napoleon is always right, and you can't anticipate what he's really doing based on what he appears to be doing because he's so much smarter than you.
So much smarter that really you just can't keep up with yourself. Very good. All right, let's move on. We're going to do one more scene. Boxer is the very large cart horse on the farm, and Boxer does all the hard work. When they build this windmill and they have to bring all the rocks, Boxer is the one who drags all the rocks there. Unfortunately, Boxer is one of the dumbest animals on the farm, so he doesn't realize how much he's being manipulated. So Boxer gets harmed while helping to build this windmill, and Napoleon has said he's going to send Boxer to the hospital.
Forward! Forward in the name of the revolution! Long live Animal Farm! Long live our beloved Napoleon! Napoleon is always right. Those were his last words. Rumors. Some of you are saying that the van that took Boxer away was from the horse slaughterer. Surely you know our beloved leader better than that. The van was from the hospital, but had previously been the property of the slaughterer. No.
So, when Boxer was taken, the animals saw him loaded into the van. They all said goodbye because he was going to the hospital. And they closed the back of the van. And one of the animals, Benjamin, who's the donkey who can read, read the back of the van and said, horse slaughterer and glue manufacturer. So the animals are thinking, you didn't send him to the hospital, you sent him to the horse slaughterer. So I would like for you to now look at Squealer's words where he's trying to explain, no, we did not send him to the horse.
What he's saying is that despite the fact that you can read, you still wrote the big picture. Even though the truck said horse slaughter.
That's good though, right. This is what I try to teach you. Right. I understand the big picture.
I know that you can read, Benjamin. Benjamin, did you know this? That's why Napoleon's the leader, because he knows everything. He knows that he's just going to the hospital.
Alright, so I'm going to bring everyone back together. Is there anyone who'd like to share what they think Squealer actually means?
I think it's just completely manipulating their trust, that he's saying that you're being disloyal if you don't believe the truth that Napoleon is saying. He's using their faith in him to make them live better lives. Yes. Anyone else?
I had some really good discussions.
Yes.
Seems like Squealer is saying, yes, you're right about this small item, but we understand the bigger picture. And you have to trust us. And if you think about it, that's what parents always say to kids, right? We understand the bigger picture. It's what teachers tell students, it's what administrators tell teachers, and it's what the central office tells administrators.
Right, and the idea that they did read on the back of the van that it said horse slaughterer and glue manufacturer. He's like, oh, no. The hospital bought that van last week. They just haven't had a chance to change the label. That's all. Yes.
Would the students pick up those were his last words?
Say again?
The students, would they pick up on that line, those were his last words?
Yes.
So he went to the hospital.
They think that he's hospital. Picked up the farm. They understand that at the hospital, Boxer's injuries were so extensive. Because in reality, Napoleon had sold him to the horse slaughterer and glue manufacturer so that he could get money in order to buy whiskey. The pigs are now drinkers. Okay, so this task can be done many different ways. And I've kind of, in your packet, given you the various ways that I do it. So, for children who are struggling, you can give it to them like this, where you give them the context, you have the text written out for them, and then you work with them on the interpretations. And usually for all my classes, whether they are high or low, I would help them do the first one. I would kind of show them how it's done. This year, my group, even though they were 50% former L's or L's, I pushed them a little further. On the back of that sheet, you'll have one that looks like this. Because Squealer makes many speeches throughout the book. We don't always use the movie a lot of times for this activity, depending on the group. I may not use the movie. They pull the text directly from the novel. So every time Squealer would have a speech, I would have them write down, what does Squealer say in that speech? And we would interpret it. So the first one, the one about the milk and apples, is the first big speech that Squealer makes. So we would do that one together. Then another one comes up soon after that about the changing of the commandments. They would write down what Squealer says, and for the next couple, I might have them work with a partner or work in a group to interpret what Squealer says. But as they go on, I pull back to support, because eventually they're going to have to do it on their own. So for the last few, I would say, okay, after Squealer makes his speech, the sheet comes in and out of their folders a lot. They would write it down, and then eventually I would make them make their interpretations on their own. And then they might share within a group, or share with a partner, to kind of see if they're on the right page. So, this is a nice little worksheet. For what's its purpose? Is it just for the sake of writing down what Squealer says? Nope. Because it's all about the writing. All of this will be used to do a performance task based on the book. So you have performance task in your packet. All right, so our performance task is throughout, though all the animals are affected by Napoleon's decision as the leader of Animal Farm, none of them successfully protest the changes that he makes. In approximately one page, explain how Squealer's techniques of propaganda contributed to Napoleon's rise in power. Napoleon would not have gotten where he is if he didn't have Squealers talk for him. They would then go back and take out this sheet to help them complete this task. So they get the task, they have it. Some of them are still looking at me like a deer in headlights. You want me to write all of that? I guess I do. But I break it down a little bit further for you. They get an evidence worksheet. All right, you have all of this. All of this is not going in your performance test. You have anywhere, well, I have 5 on here. In reality, when they get this sheet, it's front and back. The Squealer makes about 7 or 8 speeches. They get an evidence worksheet, and they get to pick 2. So they would pick 2 off of this that they are most comfortable with. The 2 that they feel they understand the best. And they would go to the evidence worksheet for the performance test. They get this and the performance task together. We go over the task, we talk about the task, and then they say, all right, let's take everything you've got and get it organized. I'm not going to just ask you to go off and write 5 paragraphs for me without giving you some sense of how to put it together. So they would choose 2 different ways, and they would use this sheet to find them. So by this, they already have the quote they need to use. Within the quote and within the scenario, they know which animals have been manipulated, whether it be all, whether it be one in particular, because there's certain speeches that Squealer gives that direct animals are manipulated. There's one where Boxer is directly manipulated. There's another one where one of the other animals is directly manipulated. It's not the whole group. So they would take this to help them do this. And once they have this, you should see how quickly they write a performance test. Once they have it all organized and together. So it's not this big, huge task. It seems overwhelming to them. It's a step-by-step that starts probably weeks before they even get to the task. And then all of a sudden they realize, I have everything I need to write this and then write that. Does that make sense? Any questions? Yes?
I was just struck when you said it's all about the writing, and I was thinking that it's just about so much more than that. It's about inference and teaching all these core standards. So how do you strategically help them get clear about what they're learning? Because the writing is more of a vehicle to help with those big ideas.
One of the core standards that I focus on for all of them is citing evidence. Because I expect them to do it when we have a conversation about the text. They can't just tell me their idea. I'm like, that's great. How do you know that? And they have to go back into the text and find it. All of these worksheets that I give them is about going back into the text and finding that evidence. Because I have found with my students over the last couple of years of doing Common Core, if they can cite the evidence, they can pretty much do any of the others. That is the hardest one that I think my students have trouble with, because it's that idea of writing, going back in, and not just picking any piece of evidence, picking the one that makes the most sense, the one that's going to get my idea across the clearest. It's about letting them choose which one really works for this. Which example do I really want to use and develop even further? Does that answer your question? Anyone else? All right, so we're going to move on because we do all of this, and then how do we know it's not just going on in Mrs. Carroll's classroom? How do we know it's going on in room 310 or 312 on the other side of it? Ms. Teresa Lewis will explain to you a little bit about that.
So in order for this great work to happen, we do have a few structures in place at IS 52. Some of our structures include our teacher team meetings, where we meet twice a week to go over planning and instruction. We have our professional development during our teacher team meetings led by teachers. We have teacher inter-class visitation. We have weekly AIS periods for our struggling students, or students we feel, the teachers, are needing a little extra support in the classes. Additionally, we have Friday and Saturday academies, where we meet with the students who need extra help beyond just that one period to bring them up to speed. So what happens during our teacher team meetings? Well, let's just come back here. I don't speak very loud, I apologize. During our teacher team meetings, we do focus on instruction. So one session, we do meet to talk about possibly weaving subjects together, or interdisciplinary units. We plan together, we discuss topics, trends. We also discuss ways that we can make instruction better throughout all the subject courses. From those discussions, we then plan professional development around the ideas that most of the students are struggling with across the classes. So that's during our teacher team meetings. We also form inquiry groups. So for our students who are not meeting our expectations, we do place them in an inquiry group where we do run cycles of 6 to 8 weeks at a time, focusing on key strategies. And so in those sessions, in those AIS periods, we would help to bring up the students in the area that they're most struggling with, be it an idea, concept, a skill, whatever it is that they might need in that area. To make sure some of this is actually happening, like Ms. Carroll said, across all the classes, that we're providing support for teachers so that we can better inform instruction, we do have inter-class visitation. And Mr. Wilson, if you were to skip to the next one, there is an inter-class visitation protocol that we do use. And in that protocol, we first pair up with a teacher. And pairing up with that teacher, we decide what it is that we want to focus on going into his or her room. They let us know what they want us to look for, teachers of course. Once we go in, we do low inference notes. So we simply just notate what we see, and then following that visit, we meet again to discuss what we saw, provide feedback, and the visited teacher then shares his or her reflection. That is our interpretation protocol. Mr. Bill, next slide. Following these inter-class visitations, we might find that there is something that we as professionals need to work on, and from those visits we then schedule or develop PD that assesses whatever the need is that we have. A need that we had in the school was providing quality feedback to students so that it can move the instruction. So we did provide a quality feedback PD where we talked about, what is feedback? What is quality feedback versus what it is not? We then created this shared idea of what it is and what it's not. And then we met again, Mr. Wilson, we met again to actually look at some feedback that we provided to students and then assess whether that feedback, the next one also, discuss whether that feedback was meaningful or purposeful, and if in fact it will help the student to move. These are just some of the structures that we do have in place in making sure that all this information is trickling down to the students and providing them with the support that they actually need in moving forward.
And I just want to add something to what Ms. Lewis said. In your packet is also 2 rubrics. The full-page rubric. There's one, an argumentative rubric, and there is one that is informational rubric. Those are school-wide rubrics. The ELA teacher uses them, science teacher uses them, social studies teacher uses them, so that everyone is on the same page. And when the students are getting feedback from a rubric, it is a common language. So that maybe the science teacher isn't focusing so much on the grammar and mechanics, but they're focusing on content vocabulary. They're focusing on the development of the ideas based on a lab report. They're going to focus on the areas that are most crucial to their subject area, but it is a common language. So they're hearing the same thing from the ELA teacher and the social studies teacher and the science teacher and the math teachers as well.
I do want to add that those rubrics did come out of a set of PD as well, and having discussions with our peers, and they said, well, how do we assess writing across the subject? And so from our meetings, we did decide, well, maybe we do need some sort of uniformity within the school so that we know what it is that we're looking for, and that is our end result.
So I gave you copies of those as well. Yes?
I have a question. When you said that someone pairs up with the teacher, with the visiting teacher, who does the pairing?
Teachers. So let's say
another colleague.
Another colleague. Let's say Miss Carol is introducing a new topic and she wants, just a second eye in the room to see, well, hey, am I doing this the way that I really want to be doing it? She would invite me in, and then I would go in and just low inference notes on what exactly is happening, and then we sit and look at it together and then discuss.
Or let's say I need help with feedback.
Yeah.
I know I'm giving feedback to my kids, and maybe I don't know if it's the best. But Ms. Lewis, I know, gives great feedback to her kids. So let me go into her class and let me watch her do it. I would meet with her and say, you know what, can I come in? When are you going to be doing this? When can I see it? And it's really, our school is very much an open door policy. If somebody wants to come into your room, come on in.
May I interject now?
Yes.
Yes. I am actually the Napoleon and they are my Steelers. I believe that very clearly that the teachers are the experts. I do not know it all, but I do know how to set the structures in place to develop a culture of learning. So at 52, we are learners before we're teachers and before we could deliver this instruction. You notice not once they mentioned the Common Core, because we live the Common Core. Every unit of study were developed by our teachers in all content areas. We didn't get them off a website. We hire consultants that we chose, not that were chosen for us. that we said this is the best people that we want to work with us because we're a good match. We're part of the Common Core lab site for New York City Department of Education. And they're doing a wonderful job in New York City getting our schools developed for the Common Core. We have the citywide instructional expectation. So rolling out the Common Core in 1,700 schools has been a challenge, but I think our Chief Academic Officer, Shel Saransky, and we have our deputy here, Josh, they're doing, and our network leaders and all that, they're doing a pretty good job in New York City. Our team has been part of that since 2010 with them. So, but we don't talk about Common Core. We just talk about quality practice, quality teaching. I want to thank Roger and Lisa. They came and visited our school. They're researchers, professors at Boise State University. You guys can stand up so they know who you are. They came to our school and they posed a challenge to us and they asked me, what is your moral imperative? So we went back and we, what is more? Our mission, our vision. So we're hammering it out, and one of my teachers that was sitting at the meeting said quickly, you know, we have these self-imposed ceilings, and we need to, so this is our version. You're the first one to see it. Ms. Leon and her team put it together, and I saw a little bit. The only thing I contributed there was actually some of it, right? A little bit. But this is what the most impressive part. IS-52 is the root of our dreams. The Maya Vasquez. This young lady used to do her morning announcements every single day, since 6th grade through 8th grade. She came every day to school. She used to get to school at 7:15 in the morning. We started classes at 8. She was in my office knocking on the door at 8:05 because she wanted to go in because 5 to 8 because at 8:05 she was going to do the announcements. Wonderful young lady. She got accepted into LaGuardia High School as a piccolo player for their orchestra. Piccolo is an instrument, right? So I'm so proud of our staff, but there are many people here that I'm proud of. We have question and answers. We have a parking lot in the back. If you write your questions and if you need anything, we also have a computer in the back that you can type your email, but if you give it, if you write your email on the post-it, we will answer your questions and we will send it. The other thing is, one thing that the teachers always do, and that's professional planning meetings that you need to understand, this is all viable in our school. We got to make sure that we're going to do it, and we believe in communication is key. One of the things that we have to be very transparent, everything's got to be given to the staff. We have a website, inwood52.org. All of these documents are on it. We have our own set of rubrics that we developed to make sure that our teachers get better. We use the Santa Cruz teaching standards. We did a little Marzano, a little Ken Marsh, a little Danielson, the old version of Danielson in 2003 or whatever when she came out with it. We made our own rubrics, and now the city of New York, we're going to adopt Danielson. So we're just taking our rubrics out, and then we're using Danielson's 4 domains to put them into our professional educators guide that's in this website. And quickly, since the work is always ongoing, so what we notice is that when we get kids in 6th grade and they go through Common Core Online curriculum, and there you saw textual evidence, you saw complex text. All my classes have, they're all on-level text that we use. We don't like to compromise literature, so we're doing literary novels with the kids, with the students. The academic vocabulary, they get in the content areas. So the social studies and all that. So if you notice in the back, we have 2 science, we have a math board in the back that we brought. We have a science board over there. We have a science board over here. And we have ELA boards in the back. Everything is aligned to the standards, whatever it is that the Common Core that we're using. But what the presenter said, we have a common rubric for assessing writing and all the content. And what I've noticed in the 7 years that I was a principal, see, I'm trying to retire already. that I've been a principal at 52, I've noticed that writing in that building has improved with a male population that when I started going there, we used to think 3 paragraphs were enough, and now kids are writing 5 pages. And they're writing a lot. So in all content areas, you get to see that around. The other thing is, since we are constantly working on this, we see what the kids do in 6th grade, and we need to change our 7th grade curriculum then. And that's what we do, and it's revising it to tweak it to make it more challenging, because whatever it is that we did in the 6th grade, we're addressing the standards, so we need to add value to what we did, so we go in all content areas. So we are constantly looking, assessing at the children. So we started this vertical conversations. That's when they do a common planning. And also it helps to have the same people facilitating the common planning meetings. This year we had Lupe Leon and Suzanne Sheeran. They facilitated every meeting that we had. So that what they heard in 8th grade, they brought it to 7th grade, or what they heard in 6th grade, they brought it to 8th grade. And we have this, and one other thing that we do that was not part of this is that we meet with, all these structures, plus we meet with the teachers individually 3 times a year. Myself, Lupe, and Suzanne. We meet 3 times a year to go over, the first time is your goal, the second time, are you getting there? But we already know what you're doing because we do a lot of informals in the classroom. So there's a lot of good things happening in 52. We're not perfect. We have a lot of things that we need to still change, but we're trying to get our hands dirty in this Common Core by providing quality instruction. So,
if you would just very quickly, in your folders, there is a reflection. It has just 2 questions. If you guys could quickly fill that out for us before you go to lunch.
Oh, before we do that, can we read the moral encouragement since this is the first time? Any volunteers?
Roger should
put us into the spot.
You inspired, Roger.
I wanted to share with you guys one of the, we call it excruciating vulnerability that's obvious at this school. Can you just tell why you're videotaping? Just quickly.
Quickly, because we have we post this on site. We're going to take this back to our teachers so they can see their colleagues presenting. We like to keep it all up and running, and we want to get better at what we do.
They critique each other openly and honestly in a dialogue like this, watching themselves lead professional development to each other. It's almost non-existent in public schools. It happens here every day. And so if there's one thing that I would say, have somebody videotape it and then talk about it and reflect on it and be okay in sharing like, wow, I didn't do very good there. That's what they do, and they're constantly getting better. So that's what I'm most proud of, is that they have this driven commitment to continuous improvement like no one's business.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because when we're starting in the fall, every teacher in our school has an iPad that we were able to get to this grant, that grant, and the other grant. So what we're doing with the interclass visitation now, when we go in and the teacher leaders go in, we're just going to take their iPads and record them for 10, 15 minutes, whatever we're there, and then we're going to give them back their iPad and say, go and critique yourself. Because what I saw, and they use the domains, the Danielson framework that we're going to use, and our teachers are ready and capable of doing that. Thank you for saying that. Ms. Carroll, can you read the moral?
I certainly can. So the IS 52 moral imperative. IS 52 staff is committed to shaping the minds of our children. It is our belief and civic responsibility to prepare our students to become leaders, highly qualified workers, and fine citizens of an intricate and ever-changing society. Our shared belief is that all students are capable of achieving great success despite the challenges they face, such as language barriers and poverty. While we have been commended for the work that we do in our school, the most satisfying and rewarding compliment as an educator can receive is when a student makes a statement such as, IS 52 is the root of our dreams. And I have asked for this aid.
And with that said, I think that pretty much sums up what we heard in the speakers for the last couple of days. that it's our civic responsibility, and I'm just gonna say to all of us here, it is time, I heard this last week in the conference that I was, it is time for us to reclaim, and you're probably gonna hear that this afternoon from Stephen Stewart or whenever he speaks. It's time for us to reclaim our profession. And we need to start making the choices. All right, thank you very much.